tell you about the time that he convinced the waiter at Goten that he was Chinese. Or maybe he convinced him that he's the only person that would put a fake security camera to scare away burglars at our house. They even highlight his own bottled water company called Chihuahua, which actually fell through after the water plant burned to the ground. We're still trying to figure out how that happened. His do-it-yourself attitude can be seen just about any day of the week. Whether he's changing the belts on his own lawnmower, making a homemade dog toy for our dog, or making his own lampshade, one of his new projects. But my father's more than just a dad. Beyond being that outgoing man who knows how to act crazy at the appropriate times, he's a loving husband, a loyal friend, a skilled surgeon, and a compassionate doctor. I've learned more from his example than anything. I've watched how he treats others, including my sister and my mother, and seen how a good sense of humor is critical to living a joyful life. From his genial attitude and caring persona, I've shaped my own personality. Beyond having taken over the monopoly of the Vanderbilt fan of the game, having won 3 times myself, I've learned that not only my dad, but fathers as a group, teach us students the most important things in life, qualities that will be instilled with us forever as we leave MBA and go on to college. My father's support is insatiable. I can't remember a single instant when my father was not behind an endeavor of mine with 100% confidence. His ability to motivate me has made me who I am today. While sometimes I don't really agree with what he has to say, I know deep down that his words are coming from years of experience and are most likely right. Something that I learned throughout high school is that a dad is not just a father, but he's also a friend and a mentor, someone who I can trust to tell me when I'm wrong and lift me up when I'm down. I learned from my father's example of encouragement each day. Being an OBGYN, my father professionally brings life into this world. And as my father, he teaches me that living life fully, completely, and passionately is the only way to thrive in this world. My only hope is that I make the same impression on my son's life one day, and that my son will feel the same about his father as I do about mine. Love you, Pops.
If you have spent any significant time on MBA's campus, you've probably encountered my dad at some point or another. Whether he's flipping burgers at an NBA football game or attending one of the many productions put on in the NBA theater, my dad never met a stranger. My dad did not attend MBA as a student, but he went to a very similar high school in Louisville, Kentucky, St. Xavier High School. It is there that he learned many of the same values MBA instills in its young men. The one in particular that he lived every day of his life was service to others. As most of you know, my dad passed away this past December after a 2-year battle with liver cancer. It wasn't until after his passing that I learned of 2 stories that truly exemplify the man that he was, and I would like to share them with you tonight. At the reception that was graciously hosted by MBA in the Dead Poet Society room, a man walked in before the rest of the hundreds of people came to pay their respects. This man was a little different, though. While everyone else came dressed in coats and ties, this man walked in dirty coveralls. He came up to me, shook my hand, introduced himself, and gave me a sympathy card and a business card. This man was a homeless man who lived over by my dad's business. Every day on his way to work, my dad would give this man a few dollars, and even got this man started in a personal lawn care business. This man was still homeless and spent a day's worth of money to buy a card and get on a bus from Ashland City to MBA after seeing my dad's picture in the obituary. Similarly, there was a man who works in our apartment complex named Marcus, who is the maintenance man. He drives every morning from Smyrna to come to work all day. My dad noticed he had a car seat in the back seat of his truck, and his tires were in desperate need of changing. My dad took money out of his own pocket to buy him new tires because he didn't feel right letting him drive his young daughter on the roads that were icy that day. These stories show a side of my dad that a special few got to see, and it's what he was doing when nobody was looking that made him so special. Lastly, I would like to leave you with some advice. First, to the fathers, make time for your sons. We are extremely lucky to have great faculty and staff to teach us many lessons in life. But nothing can replace the teachings of a father. And to the sons, take time to spend with your fathers, because when times get tough, those lessons that he has taught you will be the ones that guide you for the rest of your life. Thank you.
Good evening. James Robert Tully, Jr. For the other fathers in our audience that graduated from MBA, you probably remember Jim Tully, MBA, class of 1981, a massive 250-pound all-mid-state football player. Well, that is actually not my father. Believe it or not, that is my half-brother. I cannot tell you how many times I have tried to explain how I can possibly have a 40-year-old brother. But hopefully this spring, Jim Tully Jr. will not only have had one son graduate from MBA, but also 30 years later, I will become his second son to graduate from Montgomery Bell. Like many boys that come to MBA in the junior school, I began my 7th grade career playing Big Red football. Unfortunately, when I got to high school, I finally came to terms with the reality that my physical build was not really the ideal prototype for the next Tully football star. My dad, however, had a tough time understanding that getting crushed every day in practice wasn't enjoyable for me. He would always say, "Oh, you're a late bloomer. By the time you're a senior, you'll be 6'1", 180 pounds of twisted blue steel, just like me." Yeah, as you can see, I'm not 6'1", and I wrestled at 126 pounds this past winter. My dad finally learned to accept the fact that football wasn't really my thing, and he has grown to love the sport of wrestling. I didn't start wrestling, however, until my dream of becoming a basketball star was cut short after 7th grade tryouts. A consequence which probably made my dad much more upset than even I was. He gave the typical father response, "Oh, they don't know what they're missing." Yeah, this fall, however, my dad promised me that he wouldn't miss a single wrestling match this year. Yeah, okay, I told him. 6 months later, I can tell you that he traveled to every single match and every single tournament, all the way from Memphis to Atlanta. This is one example of my dad's tremendous amount of dedication that means a lot to me, and is something that I'll cherish forever. Now, somehow my dad contains a fabled reputation as some hardcore military man. I believe it's because most people have really never seen him laugh, or it could be because he won't even acknowledge when a person is talking to him. Well, candidly, his sense of humor develops out of a level of immaturity that rivals some freshmen. And I promise you, he's not ignoring you on purpose. He just refuses to diminish his manhood by wearing much-needed hearing aids. So, easy. Another credential to my father's resume is that he's perfect at everything he does and never makes a mistake. Although I'm sure my dad is the only father who feels this way, he actually thinks he knows more than I do. Yeah, the only problem with this perspective is that I don't think he realizes where I go to school. It's a fact. MBA students are actually never wrong. I can always tell when I've won the dispute when he sarcastically says, "Oh, that's why I call you son. You are so bright." Yeah, funny. Arguments are bound to happen occasionally between father and son. It's part of the natural competition for dominance of the house. Of course, I'd rather be listening to an old story from the glory days, but these quarrels have helped our relationship grow. Now, tensions have grown especially high this year due to the added complexity of college decisions. My family has had 3 generations of men attend the United States Military Academy. More than halfway through my application process, however, I came to the conclusion that I did not want to pursue an appointment to West Point. I knew my dad would be crushed that I didn't want to continue another Tully tradition, and I was right. After he learned the news, it took him a few days to get over my decision. But eventually, approximately a week of almost complete silence, I was finishing some homework when he came into my room, and he said, "Life's just a blank, and you should do what makes you happiest." Most of our controversies revolve around what's best for me, and Pops will always be my biggest critic. He's a perfectionist, and okay is never really good enough. Thinking about what my father means to me, I discovered that most of my actions revolve around pleasing him. Although I wasn't a football star or an Army cadet, he still remains as my leading supporter. Fathers serve as that foundation upon which you make your own decisions. Why do I put the garbage can out every Monday? Why do I work on homework all night? Why did I ever decide to play sports? Why do I treat people with respect? All of these questions have multiple reasons behind them. But a big part of each answer is that I want to make my dad proud. Sure, I have self-motivation, but knowing your dad was watching adds that extra pressure and effort to avoid letting him down. And whether it's my grades, my athletics, or just being courteous, there's no better feeling when your dad looks at you and he looks at you in the eye and he says, "Son, I'm proud of you." Thank you. Love you, Dad.
First off, I'd like to start by wishing my dad a happy birthday. Yesterday, he celebrated the 40th anniversary of his 26th birthday. The first thing people ask about my dad is if his real name is actually Doc. Everyone calls him Doc, and many a pun has been made on his name. Anytime he is introduced, the speaker says something along the lines of, "What's up, Doc?" Or, if there were two of them, they'd make a paradox. So naturally, anyone meeting him would think that he was born Doc Hooks. Well, he was actually born James Hooks, but there was a story behind his nickname. When he worked at the Bell Laboratories in Atlanta, he was still married to his first wife, who was a nurse. In order to check the internals of the lab systems, he would bring a stethoscope to listen to the computer, thus earning him the title of the Doctor of Computers, or Doc for short. My dad's life has been filled with such stories, most of which he has shared with me. There are too many stories to share with you today, so I'll just run through some highlights. Playing one-on-one with Julius Dr. J. Irving, Dr. J let him win. Hanging out with Rita Marley in Jamaica and getting a personal concert from Ziggy. Swimming with the Beatles, well, not actually swimming with them, but he was about 50 yards away in the same ocean, so he likes to say he was swimming with them. Meeting the members of Led Zeppelin and watching them practice before a show. The list goes on, but the way my father has truly influenced me is helping create stories of my own. Most of these tales, as you have noticed, have something to do with music. Doc raised my brother and me right, on the power chords of classic rock. His childhood revolved heavily on the concert scene in Miami. He lived there right in the middle of the 60s, allowing him to see a legendary artist on any given night. He has passed on this love of live music to me. For example, my first concert set the stage perfectly. ZZ Top with the Pretenders and the Stray Cats. Ever since then, he has taken both my brother and me to countless shows, including Jimmy Buffett, twice, Eric Clapton, Billy Joel and Elton John, and recently The Who, both his and mine all-time favorite band. Doc has also fully supported me during my exploits in music. Going against the warnings of all of his friends, he bought me a drum set when I was in 4th grade. With his encouragement, I've progressed to the point where I can currently play with the jazz band here in front of all of you today. Most people called him insane for purchasing me the loudest instrument for a kid to play, but my dad seemed to know that it would eventually develop into my passion. My father also fostered my love of all things electronic. As kids, my brother and I would ride down with him to the public library to check out their collections of computer games. We got them from the library and then took them home playing hours of these simulated board games. My dad, seeing how much fun we were having, would promptly return to the library and check the games out a second time. The geek in him took hold in me as well, and I now work for my 40-something-year-old older brother, installing home theaters, and I'll be studying computer science in college next year. Dad, you have told me all of your stories from your life, and we've written some of our own together. Now the time comes for me to go and write my own. You have always supported all of my endeavors, and I know you will do the same at college and beyond. You will always be behind me as I seek to create my own tales that I can one day tell my children. Thank you for always being by my side, and thank you for all the experiences we had together. In closing, I'd like to leave you all with one of my favorite quotes of Doc's. Whenever the going got tough for my brother or me, he would drop this little gem on us, and it stuck with me. So, gentlemen, I would like to tell you, in the immortal words of Doc Hooks, don't sweat the petty things, and don't pet the sweaty things. Thank you.
Have you ever met a man whose laugh projects across an audience no matter where you are? Well, if you haven't, then you should meet Timothy Kyle Garrett Sr. That man is my dad. You also might have heard him already laughing at other speeches. That's a pretty good bet. He is a loud, passionate, and forgiving father who is talented in many ways. And he will quickly let you know his talents, achievements, and pedigree. Being the lawyer that he is, speaking out is not too difficult for him. My dad is loud. Of course, he is loud at football and lacrosse games, but he is probably the loudest at wrestling matches. It's not always when I'm wrestling either. My dad will be screaming out the right move to the person on the mat, and since my dad wrestled in high school and college, he knows a lot of moves to yell at you. But then again, I wondered if he really is that loud. I was thinking about that issue during Franklin Garston's championship match when I was down closer to the mats, and my dad was farther up in the stands. I didn't hear him at all, so I thought, okay, maybe he's not that loud. I was wrong, because just seconds after I thought so, sure enough, Dad was yelling at Franklin to sprawl hard or shoot. He's not only loud during sports games, but he also has a loud laugh that he uses a lot. The best times when my dad laughs occur during church. My pastor will say a pretty good joke that my dad thinks is hilarious. So he laughs pretty hard, and all of a sudden, the whole youth group, they're staring at me. Another classic example of my dad's laugh occurred a couple years ago at this event. Marcus Luttrell, pretty serious guy, he had some funny lines, and they were even funnier to my dad, as he would laugh out at almost anything when no one else would. Some people might think of that personality quirk as embarrassment, but I love that part about my dad. My dad's passion is really evident from his loudness. Football, wrestling, and lacrosse have become passions of mine. And because of my love for these sports, my dad has developed a passion for watching me play. This year for lacrosse, my dad will be working in the press box as he announces some games. This was a strategic idea because he will not be able to yell at the refs through the press box. However, I can picture it right now. He slowly leans forward and says, "That's horrible, sir," into the intercom. Along with being passionate about my performance in sports, my dad has a passion for singing. I did not realize until a couple months ago that my dad was in a band in college called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He is so proud of that band that he played their CD in the car while taking home some guys from a wrestling tournament. He continues his singing through church and also through singing along to the national anthem at Tennessee Vols football games. Now that is cutting it close to embarrassment. One time, someone actually turned around after the national anthem and told him that he had a nice voice. Sports and singing are not his only obsession, because my dad is passionate about his job. He is so smart and hardworking that I see his love for his job, even though he tirelessly works to provide for our family. Lastly, my father is forgiving. His love for my siblings and me is unconditional, and I know that he will never doubt us. We may fail or mess up at times, but my dad continues to be there for us. One of his famous sayings that he tells me is, "You're my monkey if you don't ever turn a flip." I always know that along with being a forgiving father, he is also a proud father no matter what I do. Love you, Dad.
My old man, Jody Johnson, needs no introduction. As many of you are aware, he has made his mark upon me from the previous father-son dinners. And by a mark, I mean an emotional scar that both my brother and I endure and suffer from because of his relentless humor. He was supposed to simply announce an award for the Fathers Club and thank everyone who participated. Instead, he goes out of his way and claims, "My son, Stephen and Wilson, are incapable of getting girlfriends and that they have absolutely no social skills." He found this to be a shock because he's such the charmer himself. Sophomore year, he then corrected himself and stated, "Hey, my sons can get girlfriends," but he claimed that they were our cousins. And last year, took another step further and completely disowned us and claimed that he was proud of his two sons, Wesley, a Vanderbilt offensive lineman, and William, a student in my brother's class. So I appreciate you going out of your way to humiliate me, Dad. But this time, I've been asked to speak and step into your shoes for a change. When Mr. Joya called me into his office asking me to speak tonight, I was mortified. Partly because I had to speak in front of a large crowd tonight, but mainly because I had to talk about my dad. Rather than being terrified of speaking in front of a large crowd or making myself look inadequate, I realized my dad has already labeled and branded me ever since I was born, so I really have nothing to lose. I was thinking about what to write that could potentially have some sentimental value when my mother waltzed in and said, "Write about how he's so supportive and how he makes you happy." It took time to digest this, but she meant something. One of my first memories that I had about him going out of his way to please me was the experience I had playing LGH baseball. As many of you know, he coached all of you, and I apologize. He would always leave work early, come from Maryland Farms, and would coach a handful of wild children who've never played the sport before. I remember how each practice was so much fun because he had absolutely no idea how to coach the sport, because he hardly played it. Instead of helping us learn how to play, he just made a comical atmosphere that just made everyone happy and fun to play the sport. After every future game that I played, we would always journey dozens of miles to find the nearest Steak and Shake, which became a tradition throughout the years. This tradition sadly lasted last year when I decided to quit baseball. However, his provocative third base signs still haunt me to this day. These inappropriate gestures are just one of the many things he has done to embarrass me, but yet show and express his care and love. My next memory involves his supporting Vanderbilt. He was a math nerd who has attended nearly every football and basketball game. Ever since I could remember, he would take me to these events, and we would always make fun of how Bobby, his crazy brother, was so obsessed with Vanderbilt, or we would taunt angry UT fans who would sit behind us. I remember clearly one basketball game. A timeout was called, and the usual fan cam illuminated on the jumbotron right in front of us. Get ready, Dr. Macy, here it comes. As many of you know, people, usually children and college students, go crazy about this. Not Dr. Macy. Next thing I know, a rather awkward-looking man gets up with a yellow wig while his son, Jake, is cowering with embarrassment right beside him. This man has won, like Jake said, 7 times. And I just said to my dad, "Thank you so much for not doing that to me." I later learned that this incident would spark a competition between the two to see who would embarrass their son better. I also learned that this is the man who delivered me when I was born, so whatever problems you think I do have, you could either blame my dad for raising me or that man for dropping me when I was delivered. My last memory occurred last year when he and I were visiting colleges in North Carolina. The road trips we went on brought us closer together, and we would drive hours at a time and just talk. I am almost convinced he had more fun than I did. He enjoyed himself so much that he decided to have a serious conversation with me one night, and he confessed that he missed the school atmosphere and being around his friends every day. Not long afterwards, he accepted a job here at MBA as the Director of Alumni and Development. After being an actuary for over 20 years, I was happy for him because of all the years he has always put his family before himself. And now he has done something for himself rather than his family. And I was happy, of course, at first, getting to see my dad every day at work, and then my mind quickly shifted, and I was like, oh my God, what is he going to do before he gets fired? Despite thinking the worst, I thought of all the opportunities I get to see my dad every day happy at work. Now, all you hear when you hike up to the third floor of Ball is laughter and how much fun everyone's having working with my dad. Luckily, he is still here, and I have incorporated my own class period just to go up and talk with him. Having had him in my life for over 18 years, it is confirmed that he is in fact old and troubled. He has fathered 4 children who are all affected by his humor every day. He is one of the craziest parents I know, and let's just be honest, he is one step closer to being sent to an insane person household, a nursing home. While I wake up every day not knowing what my old man has done or planned to humiliate me, I acknowledge that he thinks about me every minute and would go out of his way just to impact my day. And he would make me and everyone else around me smile. And I couldn't ask for anything more. I've been inspired, and I've tried to strive to become someone who can only be a fraction of the man that he is today. As someone who's influenced my life so dramatically, my future hopes are only to become the father like he is today. And despite all the memorable verbal debates we have had, all the wrestling in the kitchen, and all the times you have threatened to give me demerits for passing gas in your office, I can safely say that we have enjoyed a meaningful, fun, and memorable time as a father and son. I'm reluctant to have my dad's traits fall onto me. Unfortunately for you, old man, your ability to torment others for fun has successfully been passed on. Ever since I was asked to speak over a month ago, I have monitored accounts on both eHarmony and Match.com just to see how many ladies you are actually capable of wooing. Of course, I had to change some of the personal information, but I did keep your picture, however. And there are some crazy women out there who are actually willing to meet you, and so in about 2.5 hours, you have a date at Bricktops with a girl named Taylor Barton. So have fun explaining this one to your wife. Thank you for putting up with me after all these years. Love you, Pops.